Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So in this video we are back with the candidates, round 4, and now I have a first decisive game from round 4 for you. The game is between, on white side, Sergey Karjakin, so the former challenger to Magnus Carlsen, and Levon Aronian. So I also covered the last game from the candidates from him, where he unfortunately lost in that novelty from Vladimir Kramnik in Berlin defense with that novelty rook to g8. So yeah. Now we are waiting up for an exciting game since, Aronian, a really important psychological game for him since he wants to go back into the tournament, since he is considered to be one of the favorites to actually win it. And on the other side, we are still waiting for Karjakin to actually show something, why he was actually a former challenger and why he is back in this tournament after a year. And we are starting with d4 by Karjakin. Knight to f6 and c4, e6, knight to f3, d5, so a pretty standard setup on this tournament for the opening moves. Knight to c3, and now we have bishop to b4. Bishop to g5 and d takes c4. With this move and this line, actually Aronian shows us that he is actually going for a win in this game, and that he is actually prepared something. So a much sharper line rather than in the other game. We had a c6 setup, I think, by Ding Liren in this, but it also ended up being a very exciting match between him and Grishuk. We have e4, so occupying the center, and c5. So Aronian, of course, wants to counter the center. You don't want to allow white to have e4 and d4 pawns. Bishop takes on c4, pawn takes on d4, knight takes on d4, and we can already see that white has 4 developed pieces and black should do something about it. So Aronian gives up a bishop pair. Bishop takes on c3 and b takes on c3, and now queen to a5, actually attacking the pawn on c3 and attacking the bishop on g5. You have to address it, so bishop to b5 was played and knight from b to d7. So now we have bishop captures on f6, and first queen captures on c3, and after the king moves to f1, so it's not good to put the queen to d2 to defend because you lose the rook. I mean, it could be a possible situation in one of the variations, but unfortunately you don't have some ideas because the queen stays here. You don't have ideas to actually do something. It is better to put the king on f1. Now only g takes on f6, and even though black has kind of won a pawn in this situation, it is not all that good since the black queen side isn't yet developed, and the queen is kind of poorly placed on c3. But of course white needs to show how to actually attack it, because the king is on f1, you are not castled. And Karjakin goes for this line with h4, putting the rook to h3 and then using it like this. So it's a normal thing to actually do in this situation, but you could have also played a rook to c1, occupy this open c file, and then also try to but eventually you would have to play either g3 king g2 or h4 like Karjakin did. But this line didn't really prove to be a most useful resource for white in these games, because white doesn't usually wins most games when played this line. But actually Aronian probably knew that Karjakin was going to play this, so he prepared this line. He played queen to b4 right away, moving away from this rook, and now we have rook to b1. So actually a mistake by Karjakin, so they say, since it isn't a move that is usually played. You usually play rook to h3 right away, trying to put it into the game, because it is essentially the piece that is doing the smallest amount of work. But maybe he was afraid of some moves like e5 and the bishop is attacked, so he attacked the queen right away. And we have queen to d6 and only now rook to h3. But now we have a6, forcing this bishop to decide, will you capture on d7 or will you retreat? The thing is, when you capture on d7, you're still a pawn down, so Karjakin decided, probably because of that, to actually go to e2, but now knight to c5 and black is in a better position. Now this knight is much more active, and moves like bishop to d7, rook to c8 are coming. Because of that we had rook to c3, and now knight captures on e4. Rook to d3 and castles by Aronian. And at this point, actually, this is the last moment I think where Aronian played the move like he's playing blitz, because at this point Karjakin was already down to an hour and a couple of minutes, and Aronian had an hour and 40 minutes on the clock. So he was very well in his preparation, and here Karjakin played queen to c1. So probably Aronian was expecting something like king to g1 in order not to allow this queen to come to h2 and something like that, but queen to c1 was played, and we have queen to e5 now. So the idea is to bring the queen here, push f5 so that the queen can come closer to the defense. And actually Karjakin helps him in this idea, since he played queen to h6, and now we have, so sorry, not first bishop to f3 attacking the knight. Now we have f5 stabilizing the knight, and also, as I've said, leaving this way for the queen, and queen to h6. We have queen to f6. Aronian just said that, yeah, I am better in this endgame, I already am 2 pawns up, and I don't mind, after exchanging queens, giving up at least 1 pawn back, because yeah, I'm better in this endgame. I'll put rooks on the open file, knight to e4, and black is looking pretty good here. But Karjakin decided to accept this. Queen f6, knight f6, bishop b7, rook b7, and rook to c8. So here black is a clear pawn up. The knight will come on e4, you will include the other rook, and now it's just a matter of technique. But from this point on, pretty much all the moves by Aronian were played either fast, or at least he didn't spend more than 5 to 10 minutes, because yeah, as we all know, Aronian is a great technician, and yeah, pretty much enjoyed this position. First we have rook to g3, king to h8, and now rook from g to b3. A better move could have been rook to a3, right away attacking this pawn and looking for some chances on the a file with this passed pawn. But Karjakin wanted to play rook to a7 and then rook to b7, but Aronian doesn't allow it. He first plays knight to e4, so threatening this check, and also knight to c5. We have rook to b2, and now we have the other rook comes to d8. So yeah, leaving the defense of this pawn and attacking this knight. We have knight to b3 going away, and now this is forced. Rook to d1, king to e2, knight to c3 check, and king to e3. And king to g7, now finally defending this pawn. We have g3, so the king can go f3, g2, have some escape route, and king to f6, you want to bring the king closer into the game. Rook to a7, attacking this pawn, and rook to c6 defending. King to f3 and e5. Sorry, not e5, but knight to b5 first. So yeah, the e5 was the next move. So first the idea is to attack this rook in order to push him out of the way a bit, and also bring, yeah, the possible solution here could have been to put the knight to d5 to b4, but I guess Aronian was looking for something better in knight to b5, d6, c4, e5, because also after the pawn is pushed to e4, this knight to e5 would have been a very good piece. So rook to a8 needs to be played, and only now e5 was played. King to g2 avoiding check, but e4 nevertheless, and now a4 attacking this knight. Yeah, I guess that Karjakin was kinda hoping that this knight would go on some bad square so that he can even play knight somewhere, because his knight is looking very bad. He is cut off from this rook, also from this rook here, and he can only go to a file or something like that. And he would really like to actually improve the position of his rook. We have knight to a3. Also knight to d6 was possible, but as I've said, the main point is to jump to c4, e5, and then f3 or d3. Here knight will be just an amazing piece. To actually improve his position, Karjakin offered the exchange of rooks, rook to d2, and knight to d2, and after that e3. You cannot really take because of rook to c2, and even if you give a check, king to g7, you cannot defend on d6 because of knight to c4. So yeah, you should give up the knight, but essentially you're a piece down. Okay, maybe a pawn up and a passed pawn, but Aronian wouldn't have problems actually taking that pawn. So Instead of that, Karjakin played knight to f3, but nevertheless rook to c2 pinning the pawn, and we have rook to a6 check, king to g7. At this point, both players reach time control. Essentially, Karjakin could have already resigned this game. Okay, he played on knight to d4, rook to f2, check, king g1, and now knight to c2 was played immediately by Aronian, offering the exchange of knights because he knows that he is in a better rook endgame. We have knight c2 and rook c2. So yeah, as I've said, could have resigned the game right about now, but Karjakin is a guy who will go 60-70 moves and just play the game. So we have king to f1 check, king to e1, and rook to g2 going for the g pawn. And since Karjakin cannot really achieve anything with the a pawn because he is too slow, he decided to bring his rook into the defense. Rook to b6, rook g3, rook b4, and rook to g2 back, cutting off the king. Rook to f4 in order to disable the pushing of this pawn and also maybe attack this pawn. So we have king to g6 and rook to f3. It doesn't make sense to defend this pawn because even if you push it, white will exchange it, and then he has the passed a pawn, which cannot be reached in time essentially because the black king is not in the square. So Aronian correctly plays rook to g4. We have rook e3 and rook takes on a4. And now king to f2 and rook takes on h4, because white essentially cannot guard this h4 pawn as well. And in this situation, once again, Karjakin played on, even though he has 3 pawns down in a rook endgame. You can win this endgame even with 2 pawns, and even if they are doubled on one line, but still, yeah. So I will just quickly show you the moves which were played in this game. Rook to e8. There were many ways how this game could have been ended, but Aronian, just played steadily and essentially just won it. We have king to f3 and king to g7, rook to e5 attacking and king to f6, rook to e8 and h5. We have rook to h8 and king to g6, king to f2, rook to g5. So the whole point is just to push the pawns, the f and the h pawn, defend them, and not allow white to capture him by some tactic or give some check in order not to lose anything. King to f3 and king to g7, rook to a8, h4, king to f2, h3, rook to a3 and rook to h5, king to g1, and king to g6. Now it's also time to bring the king into the game. King to h2 and f4, rook to a7, f3, rook to a1, f2, rook to f1, and rook to f5. And we have king takes on h3, king g5, king g3, and rook to f4. And in this position, Karjakin actually resigned the game because essentially, if you capture the rook, capture the pawn, rook takes, king takes, and king to f4, and black has reached a position, and he doesn't have a problem pushing this pawn to a queen. So also, if you want to check out that, how you can actually do that, you can also check one of my videos about key squares and pawn endgames with 1 or 2 pawns. If you don't want to capture the rook, so you move something like g2, h2, h3 in this small square, the black king can actually go f5, e4, e3, e2, and come on this side. Of course, you have to watch out not to lose some pieces, and you will essentially win the game. So Aronian is back into the tournament. A very good win after that loss against Kramnik in round 3. Unfortunately, we haven't yet seen anything from Karjakin. He isn't just playing on the level he played against Magnus Carlsen and in the last candidates. So still hoping that he will show us something why he is actually in this tournament. That pretty much being it. This is the first decisive game from round 4. Still, there are games being played, exciting games. So Mamedyarov and Wesley So ended up being a draw really fast, but Grishchuk and Dingliren had a very exciting game, as well as Kramnik and Caruana. Lots of advantages, as well as lots of mistakes being done, unfortunately due to time control. But that being said, I don't want to pressure on. I would like to thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.